Hello and welcome to, of course, another movie reaction here on HSG, and of course, this time we're featuring one of my favourite horror movies, The Babadook. I believe the directorial debut of Jennifer Kent, actually. She's doubtless done a couple of shorts before that, but I think this was her first mainstream movie. And this is a movie which I think you'll probably enjoy if you're a fan of, for instance, something like Hereditary in more recent years. If you've seen Hereditary and haven't seen The Babadook, I would recommend checking it out. And potentially even vice versa as well, if you've seen The Babadook and not Hereditary. But without any further ado, let's get into the film. Home Alone meets Hereditary. And for those of you who have seen this movie before, and chances are that should be most of you, otherwise, as I said, it's getting spoiled for you. If you're an S.E. Davis fan, especially when it comes to undervalued horror, you should check out a 2005, I believe it was Irish horror film, which I talk about a few times on the channel, called Isolation. Even worse. What would be even worse? Up his nose? Schools share a lot more in common with prisons than people like to admit. First thing that happens is you get a uniform, which takes away your identity. You all get fed at the same time, with the same meals, at the same place, in an orderly way. You all get taught the same things and given the same amounts of consideration, regardless of your level of intelligence and career ambitions. And ultimately it's about you becoming part of their system, not them catering to your needs. Says it as it is, that one. Everyone's a critic, even people who aren't doing any better with their own life. In fact, those people tend to be the worst. Oh, A1 editing. He's a great child actor. I know a lot of people found him annoying in this film, but it seems to always be a few scenes that people go back to, like where he's screaming in the car, and it's like, that's hardly the whole movie. One of the things I like about this movie as well is that it has this relentlessly bleak look and tone to it. There's no real moment where it feels lighter or brighter for a moment, and of course that ties into what I believe the primary undertone of the movie is, which I guess I can spoil it because, again, you should have already seen the movie if you're watching this, but with the undertone of depression and even just mental illness in general being, where the monsters manifest themselves from. I grew up around mental illness, severe mental illness, crippling mental illness, in fact, and I know what it can be like for people like that. My dad was like that, and it is like that for a lot of the time. There aren't any breaks in the bleak. And people act like depression's one of those things that you can just say, well, we'll feel better then. Walk up to a cripple in a wheelchair. Well, have you tried walking? I actually really wanted to buy one of these books. You can buy the exact books that are in the movie. They did a limited run of, I think, like 400 or 500 of them or something like that. I like the choice of red for the book as well, instead of like a cliched matte black, because it really clashes with the blues and greys of the rest of the movie. Because if you look through the film, with few exceptions, the only things that really have any colour are S.E. Davis's character, the boy, and the book. Everything else is just kind of blue. See, if you look at the way she's shot and framed, she's far brighter than any of the room around her in terms of colour. An excellent choice in filmmaking as well to do with this film, and this is something which inspired a lot of a lot of what I do in my writings and stories that I like to think of is that it presents horror in a way that you can almost miss. Because a lot of movies, they feel like they have to bash you over the head with it and show you the horror, explicitly right in your face and use a big jump scare, bang and crash to draw attention to it. But there are a few key scenes in this movie where it's almost like a double take moment, like when she looks over to the sofa or when she looks through the window into the other woman's house. It's just these fleeting moments that you can completely miss if you're not looking for something. And I like that. I think it's cool. I'd kind of like my version of the book to look more like that. Having it all ripped up and put back together would look pretty cool. The characters in it have all of these disagreements and tension, but it doesn't feel manufactured. Like in a lot of stories, the tension and the disagreements, they feel kind of, I don't know, just like they're there for the sake of it. Whereas in this one, it all feels real, and that's almost why it's so annoying, and it actually helps the plot rather than hurts the film. It's a fine line, though. It's a very fine line. This one is the right side of the line, in my opinion. There are actually quite a few similarities between this and Hereditary. And obviously this one came out first, so I wouldn't be surprised if they inspired Hereditary, because even stuff like the clothes in the corner of the room looking like the creature but not being, very similar to Hereditary though. One of my favourite little moments. No jump scare, no dramatic music. Just a moment that's like, wait, what? That's my favourite kind of horror. One of the things I liked about that scene as well is not only the great sound design, but also the almost stop motion style of the editing, where you kind of, I guess it's more of like a Japanese cliche of like skipping frames as the ghost girl comes toward you, but the way that one's done, it almost reminded me of the way like a jumping spider moves. Those tiny little spiders that we get in the UK, they don't so much walk, they kind of dart from side to side and kind of move from one place to another, seemingly by like skipping a beat. Another one of the scenes that I was talking about. notice the colour has returned? I don't know if the metaphor of the film is as intrinsically tied to depression as I've postulated, but that's what I take from the film. How you kind of never fully necessarily get rid of that monster, but for some people you may find a way of having it move more to the background, or to the basement, if you will. Might not be what the film's going for, but that's what I took from it anyway. Also, there's the possibility that the film could be highlighting the benefits of dealing and facing your demons rather than trying to push them to the background, which, again, I could be wrong, but those are just some of the things that I take from the movie. So yeah, like I said, I love The Babadook. It's a very controversial horror film. Not in terms of like being taboo or something, but in terms of a lot of people seem to have been disappointed by it. A lot of people say, oh, it's too slow, it wasn't scary enough. To me, I don't need a horror movie to necessarily be scary. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but for me, I can just enjoy it from just the craftsmanship and filmmaking point of view, how well it was written, how good the characters are, but also, to me, it doesn't need to leave you like sleepless for it to be a good horror movie. It could just have a good point that it puts across, or an interesting slant on something. And to me, I would put The Babadook more into that camp. It's not a movie that makes me lose sleep, but it's a movie that I think definitely benefits from being thought about more. And I think some of the people who might have expected more from this, or expected something different, maybe just a traditional monster movie rather than a horror film, they were probably disappointed because it doesn't really offer that side of horror. It's actually much more emotional and much more drama related in terms of horror, in, again, a similar way to Hereditary. So yeah, give me your thoughts down below. What do you think of The Babadook? It's certainly one of my favourites. I would definitely put it in my top 10 favourite horror films. It might be in my top 10 favourite movies, in fact. And yeah, it was cool to have this opportunity to watch it again. And of course, if you are new to the channel, I've done reactions to other movies. I've reacted to The Thing, to Splinter, Black Mountainside, of course this one now, and I will be doing more in the future as well. So stick around on the channel for more. Of course, click this playlist on screen to see all of my movie reactions, and make sure to hit that notification bell if you want to check out my new videos as soon as they're released. And of course, as it says in here, or over here on the video, if you do want to check out my horror novels that I've actually written, you can click the link down below to check those out. But until next time, I'll see you then, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.